Welcome, as Len said, to the October 11th meeting of the Regional Transportation Advisory Council. I will just walk us through a few notices before we get started. First, our notice of non-discrimination. So you are invited to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status or background. You can read the full notice of your rights and protections at www.bostonmpo.org/MPO_NON_DISCRIMINATION. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following guidelines: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1, Level AA standards, and revised Section 508 standards. Should you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, please contact me, Stella Jordan of MPO staff, at sjordan@ctps.org, or by phone at 857-702-3675. And just some meeting guidelines. You will have joined the meeting with a muted microphone. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation if you haven't already done so. You may mute and unmute yourselves during the meeting, but please do remain muted unless you're actively speaking. And to participate in the discussion, you can select the raised hand function. You can find this by either clicking on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with a raised hand button at the bottom, or you can access this via the reactions button in the toolbar, and the chair will call on you. And if you're joining us by phone, you can also use *9 to raise your hand. And again, if you have any questions or technical difficulties, please do contact me, Stella Jordan, via the chat box at sjordan@ctps.org, or at 857-702-3675. And with that, I'll pass it back to Len for introductions.
Alrighty, well, thank you very much, Stella. And it's a little bit of a call here whether we have too many people to do introductions, but I'm gonna go for it. So I'm just gonna call folks. And it sometimes helps if you raise your hands. But since I'm calling, I think I'll be able to keep track of things. So I'm gonna save Betsy for last. So Sam Taylor.
Hi, everybody. Sam Taylor, Boston MPO staff, performance-based planning and programming manager.
Great. Thanks, Sam. We have a Dan.
Sorry about that. Dan Chaffee. I'm just an advocate in Charlestown.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Dan. John Seward.
John Seward, Move Mass.
Thank you, John. Franny Osmond.
Franny Osmond. I'm on the League of Women Voters, Transportation, on the Legal Action Committee, but I'm not clear exactly how I come to be here until I get things organized in terms of who I'm representing.
We will work that out. Yeah.
But I'm the vice chair, and happy to be here.
Great. Thanks, Franny. Ethan LaPointe.
Afternoon, everybody. Ethan LaPointe, Boston Region MPO. I'm the Transportation Improvement Program Manager for the region.
Thank you, Ethan. John McQueen.
John McQueen, Walk, Massachusetts.
Thank you, John. Josh Ostroff. We'll come back to Josh, maybe. Judy Taylor.
Hello, my name is Judy Taylor. I'm Climate Resilience and Air Quality Program Manager with CTPS.
Thank you, Judy. Morgan Griffiths.
Hello. Sorry.
No problem. No, go ahead, Morgan.
Hello, my name is Morgan. I work with the town of Natick.
Thanks, Morgan. And so now we have Josh Ostroff.
Sorry, I failed to unmute. Director of Transportation Planning for the City of Newton. And hi, Morgan. I represent Natick, where I live, on the MBTA Advisory Board. and the RTA Advisory Board.
Yeah, I was thinking there was that native connection and Josh. And
That's where I
you said-
sleep.
Yeah, gotcha.
Good to see you, Mr. Chair.
Good to see you too. Owen McDonald.
Owen McDonald, Town of Weymouth.
Thank you, Owen. And Sarah, I'm sorry, it's a little far down the screen. Oops, and now I just lost everyone. Sarah Philbrick.
Hi, yeah, that's me. Sarah Philbrick. I'm also Boston Region MPO staff. I'm the manager of planning and policy.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Srileka Murthy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Srileka Murthy. I manage the Unified Planning Work Program with the Boston Region MPO.
And I saw Andy coming in. So Andy Reeker. All right. Well, I'm sure Andy will ask a question. At that point, he will introduce himself. And we've met Stella, and now we're going to meet Betsy Harvey, because she is going to present or give us a little presentation on the needs assessment or the long range transportation plan, and it's in a story map version, and you all know how much I've been looking forward to seeing the needs assessment. So Betsy's going to tell us why it was worth the wait. No problem. Sorry about that. Sorry about that pause. Okay, so she's going to tell us why it was worth the wait. So now it's all yours, Betsy.
Did you want to do public comment or just want me to go straight into it?
Oh, thank you. I missed that. So are there any public comments? If so, just raise your hand. All right, I don't see any. So that's because everyone wants to hear what you have to say, Betsy. Just can't wait. So.
Well, thank you, Len, and thanks everybody for being here today. My name is Betsy Harvey. In my usual day job at the MPO, I work as the Transportation Equity Program Manager. I took over the needs assessment last spring in order to kind of finish it up as we had some staffing transitions, and it has a few weeks ago was finally released. And I'm excited to talk to you today about what is a bit of a transition itself for the assessment, and eager to hear your feedback and suggestions for both the process, if you are at all kind of involved in that process, as well as the final product. I'm not going to assume that anybody has actually read the needs assessment at this point, or has, I know some of you will have, some of you won't have, but so I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about, share my screen just a moment to show you kind of what the new format looks like. Stella's put up some discussion questions that you can consider as I'm talking. That'll be the only slide we have up for the presentation. I want to start off, talk a bit about our process and kind of what was new this year. So needs assessment, as you probably know, is a document we produce and a process we go through to develop the long range transportation plan every 4 years as a way of cataloging transportation needs through public engagement and data analysis. And this year was really a new process, a transition year between kind of old PDF format that we've done in the past to a new interactive online format, which, as Len mentioned, is in something called Story Maps, which is developed by and hosted by the spatial analysis company Esri, who owns, whose product you're probably familiar with in the context of ArcGIS. We chose Story Maps because we use and are very familiar with ArcGIS products. It uses the same sort of data formats that we are used to as an agency and as staff members to develop analyses and put them in spatial and map them basically in spatial formats. But it puts them all online in an interactive kind of storytelling format that integrates various different types of graphs and charts and maps and visuals, allows us to kind of make a more public friendly, we think, version of what can be very technical information. But it's not just about format change, it's also about how we think about the assessment as an agency. We are transitioning and are thinking about needs assessment not just as a document, but as a process of collecting and analyzing quantitative and qualitative data every year, every day, not just once every 4 years for the LRTP. And the analyses that we produce should be an ongoing part of our MPO program work, programs like the Transportation Equity Program, the Climate Resilience Program, public engagement program, air quality program, PED program, among others, and reflected in the sorts of data products that we produce for those programs, such as dashboards, which Sam will certainly talk about his performance-based planning today. And so all that work really should be feeding into the needs assessment that we develop every 4 years. We pull together the most recent data that we have and assess our public engagement input that we've received over the kind of the previous 4 years, and put together a snapshot and a story about what transportation is like in the region and how people use that transportation, and where are we today versus 4 years ago. So with that, I'm going to share my screen to show you all the current needs assessment. So this is the landing page. It's called a collection, and it is literally a collection of story maps, 9 story maps to be precise. It is centered around the LRTP's 6 goal areas: safety, mobility and reliability, access and connectivity, resiliency, clean air and healthy communities, and equity. And so each of those have its own story map, except equity. And this year was a little bit different. We didn't write a story map, one story map for equity. We integrated equity throughout all of the other goal areas, kind of symbolizing and demonstrating our approach to equity at the MPO, and that it is assessed in all of the work that we do and is integral to that work. And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a minute. We also have, as the 9th story map, a description, overview of how we approached equity in our work in this needs assessment. The first story map is a summary, has summary tables that you'll see in the other story maps. That kind of summarizes, if you just want to read one story map, that's the one you want to read, because it summarizes all of the findings from all of the analyses and engagement that we did in the context of the other story maps. And then story maps 1 and 2. 2 is about the transportation in the region today, so kind of a snapshot of where we are today. And the 3rd one is projected future conditions and travel demand, looking at demographic projections and travel demand projections from our travel demand model. So if you're interested in where the region could be going, that is your story map. The other ones are, as I mentioned, ones that are focused on the MPOs, each of the goal areas. And these are the new goal areas. These are the ones that are in Destination 2015. So I'm just going to show what one of those story maps looks like, the access and connectivity. They're all really structured and very similarly, so hopefully they're easy to navigate. It did not change on your screen. That is interesting. Okay, there. Oh, interesting. I can interact with it. Hold on a sec. Are you seeing the future conditions and travel demand? And now safety?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry, I think you can interact directly with the Zoom, with what it's showing on Zoom. So I'm going to navigate to the access and connectivity. There we go. Sorry about that. So as I said, each story map is kind of structured very similarly. It starts with the access or the goal area and the statement, the goal statement that we have for that particular goal. And then we have a summary table. So each, as I said, each goal area, each goal story map has a table that describes the issues and needs for the region, as well as recommendations to address those needs. Things that we're currently doing, such as different tip investment programs, studies we've done with links to those studies, ongoing programs, as well as things that we could do or are kind of doing, we're planning on doing as of the writing of the needs assessment. It's a very long table, and actually putting this into an interactive format allows us to put more text into a smaller frame, so you can scroll through what is actually a very long table without taking up too much room on the screen. The meat of each story map is this analysis of the trend section. It describes the engagement that we did and findings that we found relative or relevant to that particular goal area. And then, as well as a whole bunch of different data analyses that we conducted to that relate to that goal area. This particular one that we're looking at, figure 1, is the embedding of a product we produced for an earlier study identifying transportation inequities in the Boston region. So this is, again, one of the big benefits is that we can take data or apps that we've produced for other MPO work and embed them right in the story map. And so we don't have to replicate or reproduce or do extra work in order to show that data, that work that we've done previously into the needs assessment. And you can interact directly with this app that looks at destination access and travel costs directly in the story map. So that makes things a little bit easier for us and easier for readers to explore the data directly. Another, as you might imagine, using one of the other big benefits of story maps is the mapping component. Obviously, Esri is a leader in that field, and that's one of the major strengths, is being able to show all the spatial data. And not only to show the spatial data, but show a lot of it in ways that we couldn't do in a static map. And so this map, for example, shows all the transit stops in the Boston region, the little black crosses, as well as those that are frequent service or serve frequent transit. You can filter them by RTA, with different RTAs. You can also state whether you want to see just the stops that are frequent. And it should filter for it. And then you can also turn on and off different layers. So we can not only look at the stops, but we can look at who are the demographics at the stops. So if we zoom in a little more, we can see, this is Framingham. We can see where those transit stops are. It may take a second to load because it's a lot of data and I'm screen sharing. But you get the idea that you can see kind of what the intersection is with the demographics and what areas and have frequent transit stop and what are the demographics of those areas. You can turn on different layers and show that data. Another thing we're able to do is to then kind of pull out and quantify that any disparities we might find between access to different types of transit stops. And so this chart, for example, looks at different demographic groups and the percent of the population that has access to, say, in this case, any transit stop. And we can see that, for example, low-income population has a lot greater access than the non-low-income population to transit in general in the region. We can also see that same comparison for just frequent transit stops. Again, pretty good access relative to non-low-income population. However, older adults have less access compared to younger folks. So kind of easy ways to visualize transportation outcomes among equity populations. And we were able to do the same sort of kind of map data overlay, spatial analysis, and the chart that quantifies access for different population groups for a variety of different topics across throughout this particular story map, looking at access to EV charging electric vehicle charging stations, and then looking at the percent of the population within a half mile of those charging stations. So kind of this like kind of pairing of different analyses to tell a more comprehensive story about what we are seeing in our region. So that, I apologize, it is loading very slowly, but hopefully if you're able to look at it yourself, it will load a little bit quicker. It's a lot of data for it to process. So that's basically what the story maps. Oh, I guess I'll just go to the end too. After the analyses, we also have a section on MPO activities to address needs, things that we're doing, things we want to do to address some of the needs that were identified in the summary table above. And then a couple of paragraphs about recommendations for our region as a whole. So not just things the MPO could do, but things that other partner agencies, municipalities, other folks involved in transportation could do to address some of those needs. So I'm going to stop screen sharing for now, and as we can kind of start transitioning to the discussion questions. But before we go there, if you want to put the slide back up, Stella. I just want to say a few things about what we're thinking about for future iterations of the needs assessment. We know that things would be improved. We know that both product and process are not perfect, especially because this is a transition year, and I'm interested in hearing about those things that you'd like to see. And we will certainly communicate that to whomever we take on as our new LRDP program manager in the near future. Going forward, certainly, we want the entire needs assessment process to more directly inform our work, not just every 4 years, but every year as we develop the UPWP, as we develop the work scopes for our programs, the Transportation Equity Program and others, as well as the studies that we decide to fund. We want those to be directly informed by those summary tables that I pointed out that are at the beginning of each story map. We also want to support the needs assessment through our programs by producing analyses that are relevant and that can feed directly into the needs assessment. I pointed to that application that was embedded into the access and connectivity story map that was taken directly from the study identifying inequities in the Boston region. And so that sorts of synergies of being able to take work that we've been working on and feed that into needs assessment is kind of a way that we think that can both support the programmatic work, but also make developing a assessment kind of more easy and streamlined, so we're not kind of duplicating work. We're kind of doing the work through our programs and then communicating that in a kind of comprehensive, cohesive story every 4 years in our needs assessment. And so that data would be available, that information would be available in the off years and interim years, right? You always do have access to that particular application on destination access, even though it is part of also the need assessment. So hopefully that makes sense, is the idea of like, we're producing data that is not, you don't just see it once every 4 years, like it's available through other kind of work products and other work that we do as an agency, but that is all kind of pulled together into one needs assessment every 4 years to tell that story. So that we want to be able to make sure that folks who are really interested in kind of the nitty-gritty and the more in-depth data kind of have access to that through kind of the program and study products that we produce, but then also have that kind of more easily digestible needs assessment that we make every 4 years. So with that, I'm going to turn over to discussion questions, and I'll just read through them real quick. And we can open it up. What do you like or not like about the story map format specifically? What is needs assessment's role, do you think, in supporting the MPOs and RTAC's decision making? how do you currently use needs assessment? Are there data that you expect to be able to get from it that are not available? And then there are topics, if you've been able to look at the needs assessment in depth, are there topics you'd like to see covered that are not, or things that you think could be removed? So you can address that one or any of those, or if something else comes to mind, happy to hear those too.
All righty, thank you. That was great, Betsy. And so hands up electronically, because I'm looking at the participants. I don't see everyone on the screen here. And at some point, we'll drop the screen share, but I want to leave the questions up for a little bit. Okay, so I will ask a question, and then I'll look and see if someone has their hand up. Well, maybe I'll make a statement. So look, I mean, I really support the new approach. It has a lot of potential. I will say though, I mean, I tend to do a lot of reading on transit, and so I don't really have online access, generally, and so, in other story maps, I've been able to, I think like the one for the Blue Hills, I was able to generate a PDF version of it. And I know it's not the same because it takes a snapshot of the data, get to interact with the data. But I was wondering if it might be possible to generate like a PDF, of the story map. So at least I can read the non-interactive part when I'm not online. And then ideally would be, to maybe pull down kind of like the whole thing, so you can interact with it interactively. I know it'd be a huge download, and probably the answer is no, but I've asked questions where the answers have been no, and it got a yes, so I figured I'd put it out there. So that's it for now.
Yeah, thank you. I think we can certainly look into the PDF. I don't think you're the only person who, there might be others who would be interested in being able to access an offline version. So we can certainly look into the ability for us to put that into the PDF.
Okay, great, thanks. So I see Andy's hand up.
So in terms of the story map format, I like it for a lot of the reasons that I think other folks probably like it, which is, it is interactive. It is nice to be able to look at one web page instead of hunting around from like page to page if you're just trying to look for like a particular set of tables, and it's nice to be able to zoom in on particular data. So those are all really great things. I think like Len, sometimes I am reading in a place where it's not really great for me to, pull up a story map, for example, if I'm on mobile and trying to take a look at this between different things, which is fairly common for me. And I think also generally in the public too, I don't know whether folks have the kind of type of computers and regular access to broadband internet that would really make the story maps really work well. So I like having the version when I'm sitting here in the office, but at the same time too, trying to think of the folks who may not be at the table, having maybe more like a document that is downloadable maybe as a PDF, not just the default thing that Len was talking about, but like a proper document that actually, is formatted to actually be read more like a document would be good as an alternative, just so that both options are there. I think that's probably the way to go forward. In terms of other comments about like the type of things that are included, there's a lot of information, so I can't say I could recommend adding or removing anything. In particular, removing anything. So I'll have to take a little bit of a deeper dive. But one of the things that I just wanted to share in terms of things that I'm working on in the city of Cambridge is we are reviewing our development, what are we calling them? Our transportation impact studies when we do development review. And one of the things that we're trying to come up with is a way to measure congestion's impact on transit. So I know when I was looking through that there's like congestion, part of the CMP process that's listed, and two, where the MBTA has like identified locations of high delay or unreliability or something like that from previous studies. But we've really tried to make sure that it's a link that's made very clear that it is a lot of the times traffic congestion from other vehicles, in particular single occupancy vehicles, on streets that impacts transit's ability to be reliable and a good option for people in Cambridge. So I don't know how you start to get at that. It's really the intersection of those two pieces of data that is really important, I think, for it to be a really, nuanced and well understood assessment, right? So it's not just one piece, which is congestion in general, and one piece, which is where the T sees, operational issues. It's when those two start interacting with each other that the problem really is challenging. And then secondly, on the kind of safety piece, which is kind of incorporating the Vision Zero type, type of mentality, I think is looking at some of the, I think it's maybe in the congestion management mobility pieces, but there definitely is a breakout about the arterials where the average speed is 35. And I know every city in Mass that has reset the default speed limit is at 25. So I think there might be a case to be made that those groups of arterials need to be separated out by the places where either a city or whatever appropriate agency has said, the default speed here is 25 and other streets have 30, 35, 40, and they're a little bit more rural or expressway in character, limited access. Like it's starting to be like a different category needs to be created to actually assess where we are as a region, because those speed and the impact of traffic speed on safety outcomes is really like determined quite a bit, very closely. So, kind of trying to tease out the differences there, I think would be really good. My quick read of this over the hour that I had earlier today, those are the things that popped in my head.
Before I call on Dan, I just want to tell you, Andy, we will be going through this needs assessment thoroughly, like we did the last needs assessment, probably starting in January. And I don't know if it's going to be like part of every meeting or if we'll just have like an extra meeting for those who really want to go through this. So we'll be able to give Betsy, I think, more thorough answers when you come the middle of next year. So Dan.
Well, hopefully, I just want to say, hopefully we have an elected manager who can be involved with those conversations as well. So.
Yeah, well, anyone from staff really.
Yes, but
yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sorry about that. So Dan?
I like what you got here. It looks very good. I do have a couple of concerns. The source and when the data was collected, because sometimes the data is too old to make good judgment calls as you're going forward. So it's hard sometimes to justify a directive if you have bad data. So, or you make misjudgment because you didn't calculate the volume of people are greater than what you think they are. Then we get into vehicle types and the time windows they're running, which gets into the congestion factor. Are you having a lot of trucks going through at a certain time? Semis versus delivery, and then you have buses and what kind of buses for mass transit perspective. So that would be nice to be able to break that down a little bit. I know that may not be doable with the data that you have now, but as we move forward, I think that would be useful. I love the idea of the PDF output. I frankly would like to see something that's even a little bit more than that, maybe even something that's more of a movie, where you have a set of data points that you can collect and then make into a presentation showing something from A to Z type of flow. And that's it. It looks very good.
Thanks, Dan. So, all right. So I'll ask another question and hopefully some other hands will go up. So you had mentioned something about there being an easier version for people to digest. I kind of got a little confused.
This is the only version
Okay.
that we have. I probably said something along the lines of this is an easier version for people to digest.
Gotcha.
I think that's our goal, is to make it a little bit more.
I got you. I understand. Okay. I just heard, so, but I think, maybe something you indicated is that, it is good to get a snapshot, right? Of the system at a given point in time so that we can go back and compare. I like the constant updating, but I guess what I'm getting at is there a snapshot and are we archiving we're going to archive that snapshot so that we can then, like, at the next LRTP, say, like, this is what we have accomplished, in the 4 years since.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we've been thinking about. We want definitely to have a snap, like we want to preserve the story maps, the text of the story maps. I don't think we're gonna go in and update. I say this as like interim needs assessment manager,
right.
so take it with a grain of salt. But I think in conversations with our leadership teams is that we want to be able to make sure we have kind of needs assessments saved for each year, so you can go back and see that we've had. We're not gonna go in and update the current one with like new data, with the whole new text and everything, right? We'd make a new version. But there is also a benefit to seeing trends over time, right? To be able to say, okay, this is 2027, and then this is what happened at 24, 25, 26, 27, right? And in sense that like it's a snapshot, maybe I should say, of the last 4 years ending at kind of 2027, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. And then I'll loop back, but I see Franny's hand up. So Franny?
Yeah, I had a question. I was just gonna get myself over a picture, make it easier. I'm stopped. I was wondering a question and a comment about people with disabilities. First of all, how was the data gotten about whether someone had a disability or not? This comes from being on the Commission on Disabilities in Acton, and it's so hard to legally and politely get that information from people. And then the other, I'll just tell you my other things is the only problem with PDF is that like screen readers don't read them easily. And so it would be nice if, and I'm wondering how much you planned for how people with low vision or other disabilities have how the screens, how the results are to them. So
that's excellent questions, Franny. The demographic data on people with disabilities was taken from the U.S. Census Bureau. They produce the American Community Survey every year that provides estimates on number of people with disabilities in census tracts and municipalities. So that's where that data are from. I believe we used 2020 data, I think, or it was 2016 to 2020. The screen reader, the story maps is accessible to screen readers, so people can read the text. I would be interested, I think it could beneficial certainly to understand what people actually are experiencing, but my understanding from Esri's documentation is that the story maps itself as a product, the text is accessible to screen readers. And my understanding also is that you can make PDFs accessible to screen readers. And so we would certainly want to make sure that is the case. Should we produce PDFs for the public, we would make sure that they are accessible.
Thank you, Betsy. So what's the needs assessment role? So I had imagined that we, in this last cycle, that we would get the needs assessment in 6 to 9 months before we started selecting the projects for the LRTP, and that would inform the way we selected projects. And also I was thinking, we'll be able to compare this needs assessment to the previous needs assessment to see what kind of progress we made, and to get some sense as to whether the projects that we had chosen, maybe not in the last LRTP, but the one before, was making some impact on the region, because it takes a while, right, for us to pick a project and then for the project to come to fruition. That didn't happen, and I understand why it didn't happen, but I still think it's kind of a reasonable thing for us to want to do. I mean, I feel that we really need to get the needs assessment before we select the projects. I mean, and I think there needs to be an evaluation of the needs assessment, because me coming from my research background, so people make their conclusions, but you want to see the basis on which they're making their conclusion, and then kind of question them, mainly from a point of ignorance, so you can learn more. But sometimes it's from a critical nature, where you're like, I don't really think you came to the right conclusion there. So I would say in the next cycle, I mean, it would be really good if we could get the snapshot on which decisions are going to be made 6 to 9 months in advance. And if we're operating under a different paradigm where we're not doing snapshots, then we'll need to figure out how we really incorporate the needs assessment into decision making. It's not really clear to me how we would in a formal basis. I mean, you can see in a kind of ongoing quasi-formal basis in these meetings. But if you really want us to say, well, based on this is what we think we should do, we probably need something a little static for at least a point in time, from which we are then making our conclusions. So I'm going to stop, and this is probably the last comment or question coming from Andy.
I guess my question is, because it's been a while since we looked at the needs assessment from the last LRTP as well, whether there is a summary of kind of what's changed and some of, a brief description of the rationale for what's changed. So I know sometimes it's based on data availability, changes to the data, sometimes it's that we have access to different data and new data that we previously didn't have. So, I think trying to think about iterating forward, I think it would be good to have a good sense of, what has changed for this one, and trying to think about, any proposals that we have about what additions are made. Maybe there's new ways of looking at things that are, even better, and maybe get at more of our desires for a kind of a long-term planning perspective, or things like that come up. So kind of the only plug that I want to make is just be nice if there is a summary, and if I missed it, please point me in that direction.
And I can see us maybe doing some of that work ourselves in conjunction with staff, Andy. And I'm really seeing an extra meeting or so a must. Like, it's going to be a workshop for those of us who really want to dive into this, and we can report back to the larger council. But just something I'm kicking around, and we'll discuss the potential of that in November, December. So Betsy, I could go on for a long time on this, but we're gonna let you go. At least for this part of the agenda, you can certainly stay around. But we're gonna move on. But any closing comments from you before we go on?
Yeah, I mean, just that this has been really helpful. I appreciate your feedback. And just to answer Andy's question, we don't have a summary that states for the entire needs assessment, like what's new, but it does state within any individual analysis, it may say that compared to last year, this is what was different, or this is how it changed in the region. So thank you. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer. So thank you. And that's good. It's good. Makes me even more eager, to dive in and start reading these more intensely. So great. So with that, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, and that's a presentation on the performance-based planning dashboard, by Sam Taylor. Sam.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Taylor. I'm the manager of performance-based planning and programming. I am here to share with you some updates about the overhaul of the MPO's performance dashboard. And like with Betsy's presentation, also to ask for your feedback and guidance about how this dashboard could be useful to this committee, the board, other stakeholders, and the region at large. Next slide, please. So we'll start with a brief primer on what performance-based planning and programming really is, especially since this is not a program that you hear from all that often. In this presentation, I will cover the underlying purpose and vision for the creation of a new performance dashboard. You'll all be reminded of how this current dashboard looks, And then I will display some other visual possibilities and designs for the new dashboard. So while we will save discussion for the end, our ask of the council today is twofold. One, to provide staff with feedback on the inclusion of certain metrics in the dashboard, and two, to provide staff with feedback on the desired interfaces and visual features that you would ideally like to see in this dashboard. Next slide, please. So as I said, I think it's helpful to start with a refresher on the PBPP program. This process is something that all state DOTs and MPOs are required to do. And what performance-based planning essentially is what it essentially means is that multimodal transportation systems must use metrics to guide their planning decisions. This process includes 3 phases: planning, investing, and monitoring and evaluating. The US DOT requires that MPOs establish performance targets in 6 key policy areas, and MPOs are to report on progress toward achieving those targets in different increments of time. Note that these performance targets are the ones that the board typically adopts each winter, with some of them being annual targets or 2-year, or in some case 4-year targets. So that monitoring and evaluating element is what brings us to the dashboard. Next slide, please. So shown here are the 6 performance target areas. You'll see the performance target areas on the right. Roadway safety, transit safety, and transit asset condition are required to be adopted and reported annually. The others, bridge and pavement condition, travel time, reliability, and congestion management and air quality, are adopted every 2 or 4 years. It should also be noted that the MPO is required to report the metrics in these performance areas. This is a federal requirement. These are not simply metrics that we as MPO staff voluntarily elected to measure and set targets for. These are federal requirements. Next slide, please. So what we're trying to do here is construct a new dashboard that displays the performance-based planning and programming mandated performance targets and related progress. The old dashboard that is currently on the website is not organized in this way. We have been reporting these performance targets and measures on the website in the LRTP, in the tip, on the website, but these measures are not necessarily feature prominently on the old dashboard. The new dashboard will ultimately be organized in the 6 performance target areas mentioned a moment ago and shown on the previous slide. We would like to be able to include interactive charts where possible, in addition to the static charts and tables that you're used to seeing in our certification documents and during the annual performance target presentations that I mentioned. We plan to build a new dashboard that is simpler and cleaner than the old one, and the new dashboard will be built for more regular maintenance, which will save us a great deal of time as we receive new data related to the federally required performance measures. Next slide, please. A few more considerations. Most of the data shown in the old dashboard have not been updated since 2019, or in some cases even earlier. The desire for a simpler dashboard that is organized by the 6 federally required performance target areas is also shared by the feds, as they actually suggested that we organize our performance dashboard in this manner during the last certification review. And again, what we would like in a few minutes is feedback from you all on 1, metrics, and 2, visual features. Next slide, please. One quick slide about the process going into this performance dashboard. The staff has more or less determined a vision for the dashboard, especially taking into account guidance from the FTA. The second box, staff holding a workshop, is actually today's RTAC meeting. After today, we should be able to determine which metrics we would like to include in the dashboard and assemble that data from the appropriate locations. Once we have our data, the performance-based planning program will work with our data group to identify a suitable hosting platform for the dashboard and start construction. Then as we move forward, the dashboard will be launched on the website and we plan to regularly maintain that dashboard at a minimum, the federally required performance targets and progress from each year. Next slide, please. So this is the homepage of the current dashboard, which lives on the CTPS website. You'll notice that there really isn't much order to the way that the data is organized. A lot of the metrics housed under each of the subheads you see are very difficult to maintain regularly. The page is very dark. The page is also very sensitive. A lot of the metrics are very granular. Overall, it's kind of a difficult experience for the average user. Again, this is only a screenshot. We have limited time here. I didn't want to spend too much time on the current dashboard, especially since I do not assume that it is anything that anybody has visited lately. Next slide, please. So this slide shows a screenshot captured from the needs assessment story maps that were released earlier this year. What you see here is a basic chart of transit safety data showing transit safety performance on fatalities and serious injuries for each of our region's 3 RTAs. This chart is somewhat interactive, as when you place the mouse over the charts, the actual number on each bar will display. The charts in the needs assessment story maps were built using ArcGIS Online, as Betsy mentioned. It's a fairly easy uploading process where you can upload Excel sheets and CSVs up into ArcGIS Online. And it's also a platform that can be fairly easily learned by current and new staff. Next slide, please. Just wanted to note one thing before I point out what's happening in this next slide, and that is that the visuals that you see in the next few slides, as well as the last one, are meant to serve as inspiration and potential examples of how the visuals in the dashboards could be organized. They are not our full menu of options for different types of dashboard interfaces. So just wanted to mention that. But this slide here, this slide is a screenshot taken from the FHWA state dashboards page. The FHWA shows state performance and organizes the metrics in the manner that you see on the screen. You'll notice a header above each box for the various performance areas. In each box is a top line metric pertaining to each performance area. So in the top left, of course, fatalities is perhaps the most important metric within the roadway safety category, and that's why it is featured there. But then in the bottom right of that top left box, you'll see something that reads, learn more about highway safety. Clicking that box will show the other federally required metrics in each of these performance areas. So if you were to click on that one, you would get to a whole array of roadway safety metrics. This dashboard is pretty simple, but I think adequately displays performance. Next slide, please. And this slide is what you would see when you click on that learn more about highway safety box. The link takes you to a handful of charts and tables displaying more roadway safety performance. You see 3 screen grabs here. And if these metrics look familiar, it's because these are for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. There is data on all 50 states on this dashboard, but just for familiarity's sake, I chose to use the Massachusetts data here. Next slide, please. And then we have another example. This next example is similar to the FHWA's dashboard. This example is from the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, which would be better known as the MPO for the Philadelphia area. You'll see that DVRPC grouped its metrics into 5 categories. Of course, I've been saying throughout this presentation that there are 6 performance areas. To the feds, it is the metrics themselves that are important, not necessarily the exact manner in which the metrics are grouped together by policy area. But either way, each of the buttons on the bottom of the page, you see that like triangle, which is roadway safety, and the icon that looks like a road is bridge and pavement condition. Each of those buttons on the bottom will lead you to a page about performance targets and progress on whichever performance area you click. Next slide, please. So if we were to click on the secondary page for the roadway safety performance area, this is what you would see. There are 4 tabs on the left side with very clear names. And then the box in the center of the pages shows targets alongside actual performance. I tend to like this site very much. Perhaps one thing I would change about it is the dark base color of the website. But in terms of the, displaying the data, the user experience, and the ability to include short narratives, which those extra tabs allow you to do, you see this one, the one that is selected says, how are we doing? I think this performance dashboard does a great job reporting the metrics that are required under the federal performance-based planning and programming directive. Next slide, please. So as I said a few minutes ago, we're mainly here to gain the council's feedback. So a few questions just to jumpstart questions and conversation. What would be most helpful to the advisory council and other MPO stakeholders? What other audiences should staff consider when building the dashboard? How important are certain features such as interactive charts to your understanding of the metrics shown? And any other thoughts and questions that you may have. So I thank you for your attention during these slides. I'm eager to hear your feedback. I also, as Betsy did, would be able to click on the examples that I showed you screenshots of. So Stella, not sure if you want to relinquish control of the slides at any point, but I'd be happy to do that if folks would like me to kind of walk them through any of these examples. Thank you.
So I have a quick question before we go into anyone else, but I feel okay because I don't see any hands up at this point. I mean, so does our current dashboard meet the Fed's requirements? I know that one of the issues is that the data hasn't been updated, but do we have all of the categories and data sets there that they want us to have?
Great question. So staff actually developed this dashboard prior to the finalization of the latest performance-based planning guidelines.
Yeah.
So as a result, these performance measures are some of the same, but not the exact ones that the Feds requires MPOs and other organizations to include on their websites. So we are not. It is one thing that we have put forward in our certification review that we are actively working towards. But this is something that would, once completed, will satisfy a compliance need.
Gotcha. Okay, so we would need to add some things, right?
Correct.
Okay, so and we have things there that they don't require, but we could keep those if we wanted, right?
Correct. Yes, there's
Okay.
nothing preventing us from including additional measures from
Right.
what is federally required. We can go above and beyond if we would like, but there is
Right.
a set of baseline metrics that we must report on in this way.
Right. Okay. I'll stop here and look for hands. All right. Well, pop your hand up anytime you want. But use the electronic hand. Although I guess we have the whole screen here now, so I'll try and look on the screen too. Well, so first off, I thought the fact that the homepage is dark, that's just a theme issue. I mean, at some point, the dark theme became the thing. And so your comments make me think that we might be leaving the dark theme era and going into some other theme era. And so I kind of like the dashboard. I would like to see us kind of build on it, but the level of interactivity on it is really impressive. And there's a matter of what you're going to do with it, but like the congestion one, you click on one of those like bars, and as you move directions, it just kind of shows you where it is on the map. That's very cool. That is very, very cool. What I would do with it, I don't know, but should I I don't know, should I have a need for it, I'd be really happy it was there. Now, the last time I went to the site was because a resident in town was doing some research because we are trying to pass an override, and some of it's going to go towards doing sidewalk work and he just wanted to see how we compare it to other municipalities with respect to our sidewalks. So that was good. He went to this. I was like, he went to the MPO site and threw me back there to look at something that was done there. So it's like, wow, that's pretty good, you know. So that's where I was kind of going. Well, if that's the sidewalk stuff isn't required by the feds, it would be good for us to keep it if we could. So yeah, I guess my only suggestion would be to kind of build on what we have rather than do a complete overhaul, unless doing the overhaul is just easier, you know. But so that's it. Andy.
Let's see. Yeah, no, I was gonna say, as somebody who has every app on his computer set to dark mode, I still like a darker web page, mostly to save my eyes some strain. So, you know, I'm kind of with Len in kind of, you know, I think that's probably a little bit of kind of just changes from like, you know, every 5 to 6 years folks go one way, and you know, time for a change. It's kind of that cycle. But in terms of kind of the representations, I do like some of the interactive features that are currently on the site. Like Len said, the ability to pinpoint something on a graph and seeing it on the kind of expressway network, like that kind of thing is actually super helpful in kind of realizing kind of what that means. I'm wondering whether there's other ways of organizing the data, and I would love to see some exploration of that. Like, you know, I'm looking at the express highway kind of congestion one, and you know, one of the things that I constantly think of is like, you know, how long are, you know, how much time is this and stuff like that. So that's something that other folks I think are curious about. So whether it's like, you know, the speed index, I know it's probably a you know, a particular part of the day, but you know, some things that I wonder are like, you know, does that persist for other parts of the day? Like, are we talking about this location is just constantly congested or things like that? I know that may not necessarily be something that the feds are looking for in terms of a measurement, but you know, kind of in the idea that you can do what they ask and also require, but you can also do a little more as like just additional information for folks to get an understanding of, you know, what is our planning doing, what could it be doing, things like that. Those kind of duration things are really helpful to think through, because if congestion's there for, you know, 2 hours out of the day, that's one thing, but if it's there for 6 or 7 and it just kind of persists throughout the day, that's a different kind of problem than the one that maybe folks are looking to resolve. I think the other question that I have is, one of the challenges that I've had with this kind of performance-based planning and just kind of thinking about how we communicate this to, or actually, I'm trying to think about the question of what audience is this for? So I guess turning it back to you, Sam, is the idea that this is, you know, of course, folks in the public can be informed about this, but the idea is that this is really, you know, mostly informational, and that's the message that should be coming across, is that, you know, this is information for you to think about. It's not necessarily actionable. It's not like we're asking for feedback or anything like that. It's not like this is kind of the lead into a project, but just kind of wanting to make sure I'm kind of looking at this with the same set of eyes, or kind of, you know, making sure that I give you all good feedback.
Sure, Andy. Len, may I answer his questions?
Oh yeah, please. Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, please.
Sure. Andy, to answer your questions, I'll start with the last one on audience. Yeah, this is something that we've been spending a great deal of time thinking about too. There are a few different audiences that definitely initially come to mind to us. One is for internal use, as we said, you know, all the planning and spending decisions that we make are supposed to be made used with using metrics. So definitely internal use. Of course, the board and this council, especially with you know, the array of transportation advocates and experts that we have in this forum. Also, this is something that we think could be used by like academics and industry professionals, as these are definitely people who would be more inclined to visit the website or find this information, and of course the public as well. And then Andy, to get to your other questions, you mentioned congestion. I had a feeling that would be a popular area of discussion. So you sort of got to it in your own words. Performance-based planning, as required by the feds, is really meant to make aggregations and report area, region-wide data, right? It is not so much the planning area where we analyze specific congestion or even other performance in specific corridors or local, more local geographies. These are really aggregate region-wide numbers. But yes, I mean, there are perhaps other ways that we can report this. During Betsy's presentation, right? I think she was able to convey that the reporting and the needs assessment goes very in depth. There are a dozen different story maps in different policy areas. But yeah, this is more this is a federal requirement that we have to more paint like a region-wide picture of what is happening. And then Len, to address your feedback, especially on the current dashboard, quite frankly, one reason that we are looking to construct a new one is that the current dashboard that we have was built using a platform that we no longer have, that was sort of made in like a one-time fashion that cannot be regularly maintained. And also it was made using a platform that nobody on the current staff is familiar with. So that is to address your question. Yes, it would be just much easier to build a new one.
That's great. Did you say that actually during your presentation? I missed it.
No,
Okay,
I did
all right.
not. So that was a
Okay.
great question.
Okay, fine. So sometimes I just space out or I get caught up in something someone said. The next thing I know, they're like a paragraph ahead. So okay, I understand. Fine. And we appreciate the aggregate action. I'm talking about the aggregate nature of what we need to present, especially with respect to what the feds want. I know it kind of drives me and some of my colleagues on the board a little crazy. But I can kind of see this kind of fitting in very nicely with the needs assessment, and so because as I said, I like what we're doing with story maps on the needs assessment, even though I said that other formats could help me in other situations when I consume the data. But what it's doing is really great, and I can see the two really working hand in hand, and also help with scenario planning, so that you could do some like what ifs with it, and say, well, if you did this project or if you did something in this area, how would it then affect the region in the aggregate? And so I would like to see us maybe combine the performance-based dashboard, because what we really want to do is we want to see what our projects have done, in order to help the whole region. So that's a pass, but then we want to get a sense as, well, what can we do to affect the future, based on the needs. So maybe you can use this platform to drive all three of those, three being the past, the performance-based history, the present, like what are our needs, and then the future, like what kind of scenarios will get us to the places that we want to be. So that's it. And I see a hand by Dan. I mean, you can respond to that if you want. It wasn't a question; it's more a statement. Okay. So Dan.
Yeah, I like what you got there. As far as the darker side of the world, I too find it very disturbing when you have to stare at a white screen for long hours. But the thing I was wondering about was notification of new data. Like for instance, I have a concern about a certain street or thoroughfare area. And if any new data comes about, it'd be nice to get notified with an email or some other notice. That would be useful, so that you're not having to go to the dashboard to always reevaluate something year to year. Does that make sense?
Yes, so what you're saying is it would be ideal to have some kind of like notification mechanism about major changes to updated data.
Pretty much. I'm thinking about a particular street space or region, because some people might be more hyper focused on a street, others may be more concerned about an area or a township.
Yeah, I'll just jump in here, Dan, and make a suggestion. I mean, you can do like a Google Notice. I forget what it's called. I mean, I set it up a long time ago. I mean, for a certain couple of terms. I mean, and like every time there's like a mention of that term, I mean, I get a Google Notice about it. I mean, so irrespective of what they do with this, Dan, I mean, that might be a way for you to get that information. And you might find that you'll get more information than just what the MPO gives you on any given topic.
Yeah, I've used Google search services like that.
Yeah.
But you sometimes get too much information.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I don't know to what extent you can tighten up the search, but yeah, I hear you. All right. We might be able to tighten it up so that, it gives you that data that you can say, and if it shows up on the cts.org or something. So I'm not being critical, Dan. I was just trying to like get you to a solution sooner.
No, it's all good. Thank you.
Sure. So Sam, you want to say anything more?
Just that Stella, perhaps you and I and your team can take that into consideration.
So and one quick question before we go to Andy. So by when would you like more feedback from us? Let's say members now are like me, because sometimes we get the stuff and we draw a blank when you ask us, but then later on it's like, oh, I have this idea. So if people have more ideas later, when would you like them to get back to you? By when?
Yes, so your feedback would be especially helpful in the next few months, especially as we move closer to selecting a platform to be able to build this dashboard with. So until we sort of choose one, with the functionalities that we would like, your feedback would be especially appreciated over the next, I would say, between now and year's end.
Okay. All right. So why don't we plan on touching back with you by the end of the year, one way or another. All right. Andy.
So I just wanted to say, thanks for the answers, Sam. And thinking through, at least on the kind of audience of the general public who might be curious about this, I think put a link in the chat earlier, which is the my city's citywide planning kind of dashboard page. And I think something near the top is kind of just a general overview of the indicators and kind of an assessment of how are we tracking on that. And I think probably the general public that's going to be the thing that really drives them. Like only a few folks like us are going to dive into the details, but people kind of want to get a sense of like, on these kind of targets, like for particular goals, is it that, there's been improvement year to year? Is it that there's more improvement that's required? Is it that, as a region, we're actually going way beyond the kind of track that we need to be able to make the goal and stuff like that? Those, I think, are things that I've heard from members of the public that are really helpful pieces of information. So kind of in a different track, like I think whatever product or platform you end up choosing, the ability to do something like that where near the top you're really able to give just a general sense of like, what is going on with the different categories and stuff like that. This is going to be really helpful for the public. Now, for the detail-oriented of us who either need to be detail-oriented because we're on an advisory board like this, or folks who have that interest, to be able to dive in a little bit deeper is definitely helpful. And I think that's going to be there regardless. So I think I'm going to make the plug that something that has an ability to really get you to the executive summary level kind of understanding is going to be really important as kind of the end result of the process that you all go through.
Thank you, Andy. And yes, in some of the examples that I showed, of course, there are some platforms that allow you to include, a bit of a summary or a narrative. Of course, story maps allow you to do that, but others do as well. And yes, thank you for including that link.
John?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Just fine.
Oh,
Just
great. Okay, thanks. Yeah, very interesting, Sam. I guess all I'd be doing would be adding a layer or 2 or 3 or 10 of complexity to it. So I'm not really sure how useful this would be, but in terms of measuring the movement of the needle, let's say improvements in certain areas, it would be helpful perhaps if you were able to show the cause of what some of the problems are, or what are the inputs and how they've changed in terms of, let's say, congestion or accidents, collisions, and those might vary by mode, and again, location, and also the degree of cooperation in that region of getting really adequate information on collisions, because I know that's underreported. But to be able to, let's say, factor in some of the ongoing, even deeper obstructions to our goals and what we would measure, let's say north-south rail, how would that impact 495, any of the other items like that, or let's say improved rail frequency and safety in terms of ridership, being able to see what's the obstructions are, and then what some of the programs have been to address the overall situation to move the needle, I guess, to our intended target. But that would layer too many things, but to maybe add some more, and I don't know exactly what they might be, but what it would take to get closer to our targets and be able to track that. I don't know. Just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Yes, that's good feedback. Being able to tie all this back to certain causes or inputs, as you said. Yeah, we can look into how we would do that. I think maybe you're getting at perhaps past projects or policy changes, or other things that might influence some of the trends that we see in the different performance areas. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good comment, John. And we want to know why we are where we are, how we got there, because that'll inform and how to make the kind of changes we want, so, or at least try, so. All right, well, we can wrap up this part of the agenda. Sam, you want to make any final comments?
No, just thank you all for your thoughtful questions.
All right, and we'll do our best to get back to you by the end of the year. And Stella's pretty good at kind of noting when we say we're going to follow through. And so we don't have forgetting, as a reason for not doing so. So thank you once again. And you're welcome to stay. You're welcome to go. Yeah. on to the next part of the agenda, which is a meeting minutes, and looking at the number of people here. Stella, I'm not sure, being that we can.
I believe we have a quorum.
Okay,
still.
good. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So then, can I get a motion to approve these minutes? I mean, although these are July minutes, so as I recall, there was an email about these. Stella, do you want to explain anything about them?
I would just, yeah, so not to put John on the spot here, but John reached out before this meeting to just make a note, a request for a modification of one of his comments during the discussion of the LRTP. So certainly happy to do that, and happy to either do that and then bring these minutes back in a modified form, or if folks would like to take a vote today to approve with a modification that John has requested around the representation of one of his comments, then we can make that change after the approval and post the updated version. So happy to sort of entertain whatever folks want to do, and if there are any other comments or discussion, please definitely let me know.
Gotcha. Well, I'm gonna let John make that motion, so he'll make the motion that appeals to him the best with this,
That's a tough motion. I was just gonna abstain because, I wouldn't really be able to approve or comment on it at this point.
Right. Okay. Well, that's informative in and of itself. So maybe that just says then that we should, because essentially you're going to want them to come back to, and I can see, I'm tempted to say, well, approve them, and then you work with Stella, and then if you feel that they're substantive enough, they can bring them back into the group. But maybe it's just better to have you two work on them and then bring them back into the next meeting. Unless that is coming too close. Are we getting past, like, we're supposed to have these done like in 90 days, right, Stella?
It is 90 days or 3 meetings.
3 meetings, okay.
Whichever is falls before.
July.
So we're 3 meetings, yeah.
Well, we didn't have an August meeting.
Oh, true, yeah.
So September. So it'd be October, September, October. So we haven't until November. So why don't we just wait and bring them back in November? Then we'll have 2 meetings to review. Does that work for you, John?
Bring them back in December, right?
Bring them back in November.
Well, there'd be 1 meeting, right?
Well, this is July. This is the July minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought we were talking about, fine, whatever.
Well, I'm saying we'll have 2 because then we'll have probably another set of minutes to review. But so yeah,
Correct.
I said that and just confused the situation. But for the July minutes, you're fine with coming back in November? Yeah. Okay, great.
Why not? Sure.
Okay, all right. So we'll do that. And so now, what everyone's been waiting for, it's the elections. And I'm sure there was lots of early voting, so it's all anticlimactic. At this point, because there was some suspense. Like how many people voted. Yeah. So Stella, I'll turn it over to you at this point to get that meeting.
Sure. Thanks, Lynn. And yes, I have a couple of emails to voting members. So you should have heard from me prior to this meeting. Folks had an opportunity to vote if they weren't going to be here or had to drop off early. So let me just stop sharing for a moment and pull up the results on my end so that I can give the most updated version. And while I'm doing that, if folks haven't had a chance to vote yet, pause for a couple minutes here. If you're a voting member, you should have received 2 emails from me, both containing the link to the electronic ballot.
Shouldn't we vote before you show us the results so far?
Yes, so that's what I'm saying. If you haven't had a chance to vote yet, please do take that time right now, and you'll have that link in your email inbox from me.
Well, I guess maybe while we're waiting, I can do a quick chair's report. Would you prefer that, Stella, or? do you feel that you can move forward? It's up to you.
I mean, I can just tell folks right now I've received, let's see, 8 votes so far. So that is certainly a majority of our voting membership. The results, I think, to not a lot of surprise, are
Well,
so far that
I guess the question then is there anyone here who hasn't voted and that wants to vote? I mean, if so, raise your hand. You know, because if there isn't, you know, then we can just move forward, right? Okay. All right. No hands up. So.
All right.
So,
well,
drum
with the
roll.
results that we have, again, a majority of voting members have voted for Len as chair and Franny as vice chair. So I think, you know, congratulations to you both. And I'll just say, reading your candidate statements, which I hope everyone else has a chance to do as well. They're really nice. I just look forward to supporting both of you this coming year on you know, furthering the initiatives that you mentioned in those statements, including things like membership, things like diving deeper into some of our programs and processes, and just generally, you know, moving the committee forward, expanding our engagement. So congratulations to you both.
Thank you, Solid. Franny, you want to say anything?
Thank you. No, thank you very much. And I too look forward to working on those things. So.
Well, yeah, me too. You know, and I'm really enthusiastic and excited. And I told the town manager in Arlington, I don't know if I scared the guy, you know, but I'm in my second term there on select board, and I said, if anything, I am more idealistic than I was in my first term. You know, hopefully that doesn't map to naive, you know, so I have a better idea how things work and the limitations of what you can get done. Yeah, but I'm a big believer in government, and I feel that government can really make things better for folks. We really don't have a choice, really. So really what I guess I'm saying is that, you know, I feel that we have good governance, you know, in our town and in our region, and I'm happy to be a part of trying to make it better, because I really do think we can make a difference, and I'm excited about the opportunity to do that more with this group. You know, I tell folks in Arlington all the time that in any other municipality or any other area of the country, Arlington would be a neighborhood of the major metropolitan area 5 miles away. And so it's not being altruistic, that we need to support the region. It's the only way we're going to work. And so what's nice in a certain extent by having the municipalities all kind of independent is that it really does force us to work together. But I think that makes us more resilient. It may make things a little slower, but we get to know each other better. And I think it just creates a more tight-knit, region. So I'm excited for another term, and let's try and get more done, and with that, I'll move on to the chair's report. And kind of one of the things that's making me more excited was went to the transit working group meeting a couple of weeks ago, and Jonathan Church his group at OTP, Office of Transportation Planning, is that it? Okay. They are putting together a statewide transit map, and kind of seeing where the gaps are. And it's this first step towards figuring out how to really build a continuous and comprehensive transit network. And so yeah, it's exciting, and I think we will be able to build on it and make it easier for people to get from pretty much any point in the state to another point using transit. But of course, the first priority will be to do it in our region. Or let me rephrase that and say, I think it'd be the point for any other MPOs to try to make those connections within their region, and we'll do so in ours, and then cross the regions, because it is those borders where it's often hard for you to switch from one service to another service seamlessly, so anyways, that's the first thing that I wanted to report as chair. And the second was I'm blanking out on it right now because Ethan LaPointe it's the metrics, the criteria for transit transformation, and maybe Stella, you can drop the link to the PDF that Ethan presented, and so take a look at all these metrics. It may be a little bit too late for us to chime in officially, but you can certainly send me your feedback, and I can use that in the meeting next week when Ethan's going to present the final version of these metrics. But I think they are good to have a sense of what we're looking at as we score projects. Not only for the transit transformation, but for other projects. So yeah. Please have a look. So those are two things I have to report. Any questions or anything else you want to add, Ethan?
Nope, that's just about it. I look forward to hearing any further feedback that you all have. There's still some opportunities for some tweaks to be made, but more than happy to discuss if anyone has any questions.
All right. Oh yeah. So yeah. So you can respond to Ethan directly, or you can let me know. When a couple of things that came up in the last meeting, and I had a little conversation with Ethan earlier, is that I think anything that creates more connections, is a good thing. Also, maybe I'm getting hung up on the word transformation, but as I told Ethan, for me, transformation has this wow factor. So when I utilize something that's been transformed from something else, there should be that kind of jaw-dropping aspect to it. It's like, this really is different. This really is better. And for me, that's the difference between transformation and modernization. So that's it for now. Notice I did not say in my my statement that I'm going to talk less, especially if no one else is. All right. Yeah. So old business, new business. You made your member announcements. Wow. I think you all are on the verge of getting 11 minutes back. If someone makes a motion to adjourn, that'll happen. Now we can't just stay here with nothing to say.
So moved.
Okay, thank
Second.
you. All right. And so with no objections, we're going to adjourn. And Stella, I will be able to stay on for a couple minutes now. So thank you, everybody, and look forward to seeing you in November. Take care.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.